Doctor Who, The Greatest Show in the Galaxy by Stephen Wyatt. Read by Sophie Aldred. Overture. It had an atmosphere all of its own. You sensed that the moment you entered. It was not a particularly big circus, nor a particularly smart one. The sawdust ring was emblazoned with the words, "The Greatest Show in the Galaxy." But the brightly coloured lettering was starting to fade, and there was not enough room in the ring for a really spectacular act. An elephant, for example, could never have fitted. Only human beings, or would-be human beings, could perform there with any ease. The seating, too, was on the cramped side, wooden benches rising steeply up the side of the tent from the ringside. You could never have got a large audience in there, however tightly you crammed the people in. Not that there ever seemed to be huge crowds fighting their way in. There was a place for a small band, but no band was ever seen playing there. Instead, over the slightly crackling loudspeaker system came bright, cheerful music of the sort you'd expect to find in a circus. In an ordinary circus, that is. The clowns, however, were undoubtedly impressive when they entered to a tinny fanfare to start the show. Cartwheeling and somersaulting and stilt-walking and juggling with an almost unreal precision, their white clown faces smiled and smiled all the time, as though the spectacular stunts they were performing cost them absolutely no effort. The Ringmaster was impressive too in his way when he finally made his entrance into the ring. He was a tall, imposing man, dressed in a glittering blue and red coat and striped trousers, and wearing on his head an elegant red top hat. In his hand he held a long snake-like whip, the traditional symbol of a ringmaster's authority, but wielded by this ringmaster with particular speed and dexterity. The ringmaster always acknowledged his audience with confidence as well, standing there isolated in the ring by a powerful white follow spot. You felt that the whole proceedings would be effortlessly controlled by the sharp crack of his flickering whip. There was perhaps something slightly disturbing about his smile, something forced, even sardonic about it, and about the look in his eyes too. But you might well decide you were being oversensitive, affected by the strangeness of the atmosphere, by that unusual feeling you couldn't quite put your finger on. And then the ringmaster would begin to speak. He spoke in a soft but penetrating voice, the rhythm of his words backed by a barely perceptible musical beat issuing from the speakers. The ringmaster was a cool customer, no doubt about that. Not the blustering braggart of the traditional circus, but someone who knew the way the galaxy operates and accepts it with a shrug. He was doing a job, and he was doing it very well, but somehow he was letting you know it was just a job, perhaps a job he'd been doing too long. Or so it might seem to you if you were starting to let the atmosphere of the circus get through to you again. The words he spoke, however, were friendly enough, and when you heard them, you would probably feel your doubts put to rest.
Now, welcome, folks, and I'm sure you'd like to know, we're at the start of one big circus show. There are acts that are cool and acts that will amaze, acts that are plain scary and acts that will simply daze, acts of all sorts that will make you all agree it's the greatest show in the galaxy.
The words continued smoothly, winningly, as the ringmaster's confident but oddly inexpressive eyes ranged over the seating banks, seeking to meet those of his audience.
There's lots of surprises for all the family in the greatest show in the galaxy. So many strange surprises I'm prepared to bet.
And then, just as you were settling back comfortably in your seat, or as comfortably as the benches allowed, and looking forward to enjoying the show, there would be a pause. The ringmaster would hold the pause, and then, staring his unseen audience full in the face, he would complete his final couplet, hissing out the last words.
"Whatever you've seen before,"
he'd announced to the strangely silent circus,
"you ain't seen nothing yet."
And at that moment, in the unlikely event that any of you were visitors to the greatest show in the galaxy, you would
Sample complete. Ready to continue?